Hello, welcome to this David Icke Videocast. Well, I've researched a few mass shootings and terrorist attacks in the last few decades to see if the official story of what happened stood up to scrutiny. Mostly doesn't. But few have ever fallen apart so quickly and so comprehensively as the official narrative of the mass shootings in Las Vegas. And the independent media has done a great job, they call citizen journalists, in unraveling this story. Although, as I say, it's one of the easier ones. And when you reach the point where the story changes so often as it has, and there are so many contradictions which lead to still more questions, that mainstream news presenters like Tucker Carlson on Fox News is incredulous at what is going on and how the story's changing, then you know that it is not something, to say the least, that we should be taking seriously. More and more people are questioning the official story of these events, these happenings. And as they do so, they realize just how much nonsense they are being told and have been told about previous ones. And this extraordinary changing story about the Las Vegas shooting is a great confirmation, and for many an eye-opener, to see the scale of mendacity that we are given to explain away society changing events and to justify changes in society that would not otherwise have been justified. And so I'm just going to go through some of the happenings of the week in regard to this story. And the central figure in this is a Mandalay Bay hotel security guard called Jesus Campos. Now, when the shooting happened, Campos was feted by officialdom as a hero. It was said that he went to the 32nd floor on another job and then was shot in the thigh by the shooter in the hotel room. After the killing had happened, or while it was going on, and that as a result of his intervention, many people were not killed who would otherwise have been so, because the shooting stopped after that. That was the official story then. And an FBI spokesman at that time said that Campos was a true hero, a brave and remarkable man, and he was given a Hero Award a few days ago on October the 10th. So that was the story then. The shooting had started, people were being killed. Campos turns up for another job that he was called out for on that floor. The shooting was going on. He goes to the door of the room and gets shot in the thigh. It is said that the shooter inside unleashed 200 bullets through the hotel door. Maybe he did. It's a lot of bullets to put through a hotel door. Anyway, Um, and because of that intervention, he saved a lot of lives. That was the story then, no longer. Sheriff Joseph Lombardo, who is fronting up this investigation with the FBI and the police and the Homeland Security, was forced to confirm this week that, in fact, Campos was not shot after the killing started, but 6 minutes before it started. So he did not intervene in what was going on because it hadn't started by then. And there have been 3 stories so far coming from official sources. One, the one that I've spoken about, where he intervened while the shooting was going on. The second was that he was shot 6 minutes before the shooting started, but he didn't tell the police immediately. And the third one, which is now the one they say is true, given time, is that he was shot 6 minutes before the shooting of the audience at the concert started, and did tell the police immediately, which begs an even bigger question, which I posed when this happened, which is, why did it take the police so long to get to that door of the room, which I will come to a little later. Now, Sheriff Lombardo did not volunteer this information. Oh yeah, the timeline's changed. I just want to tell you what we found now. No, he kind of slips it in at a news conference. And thanks to some real journalists noticing that and asking real questions, he was forced, you can see it on video, to actually admit, yes, the timeline has changed. And he had the nerve, the absolute audacity, to say when it was exposed that this change in the official story was only minute. Not minute, it's fundamental. So then this security guard, Campos, was about to appear on a series of American news programs, including the Sean Hannity show on Fox News, to tell his story. And just before he was due to appear on the Hannity show, he disappears. His union, who was apparently looking after him at this time, said that he'd gone. I didn't know where he was. And where was he? Just before he's about to tell his story, when news presenters have the opportunity to question him on this changing timeline, this changing narrative, and go into some detail of what went on. Suddenly, gone, disappeared. Now, an independent journalist, a real journalist in Vegas called Laura Loomer, then when she heard that Campos was missing, headed for his home. And there she found what was apparently his car outside. And people inside, after she knocked the door, said through the door that they couldn't say anything about anything and they couldn't answer questions. Outside the house was a security guard from a company, it seems, called On Scene, which, according to Luma, does not have a current business license to operate in Nevada and doesn't have a physical address, only a virtual address. And also outside was apparently an unmarked car. So where was Campos? Well, just as suddenly as he disappeared, he reappears. He reappears on a television program. He appeared on not a news program where journalists could question him in detail about what went on. He appears on a softball, seriously softball in his case, chat show hosted by an American comedian known as Ellen. And this is the same Ellen show that is sponsored by MGM Resorts, which is the company that owns the Mandalay Bay Hotel and employs Campos as a security guard. And Ellen also appears on slot machines at the Mandalay Bay Hotel with an Ellen-themed slot machine game. And you can see on the internet the interview, if you can call it that, completely softball, no questions about the timeline and the changing timeline, no going into detail about what happened, just a complete spin going back to the original story that he was a hero. You will see this Ellen host say that Campos saved so many lives by his intervention and what he did. But of course, that's not true. She obviously got a timeline. Well, I'm being kind, saying she got her timelines mixed up, because that was the original spin. Ellen, they're not saying that anymore, but that's what it was. This man's a hero, and this is the key as well. He said, and she announced, that this was going to be his only interview that he was going to do with anyone about what happened, because he didn't want to keep reliving the experience. Well, first of all, you relive the experience because you've had the experience, and it will be in your mind all the time. But he doesn't want to relive the experience in any more interviews. But he is one of the only people who had direct eyewitness experience of what happened, along with a maintenance worker on the 32nd floor who was up there for another job, and confirms the timeline we have now. In fact, the maintenance worker appeared on the Ellen show with Campos. So why would you only do one interview on this major story of great national interest and importance? And you do it on the softest of softball programs, where you're not asked a question worth the name, on a show that's actually sponsored by your employers. I mean, hello, what does he know about what happened that we are not allowed to know? Because clearly that's what's going on. And so he's a hero again now, because they've decided that's a good narrative to go with, to push everything aside and stop the real story coming out. Now, this change in the official timeline from Campos being shot after the gunfire started to being shot before begs the question that has been asked from the start, which is why it took so astonishingly long for the police and the SWAT team to storm the room where Stephen Paddock is said to have been shooting, and deal with what was going on. The timeline change and the new official story means that the police knew about the shooting and the room, where it was coming from, immediately after Campos was shot, 6 minutes before the killing started. And the maintenance worker, like I say, confirms this timeline and the fact that the police were told. So Campos now is said to have been shot at 9:56, and the room was not stormed until 11:20, an hour and 24 minutes, when for all they knew the shooting could start again any moment. And if, as we're now told, Campos didn't intervene during the shooting, there's another question, which is what made the shooter suddenly stop and kill himself when he had all those weapons, apparently, and massive ammunition in the room? There is still no motive that's been established for why a millionaire real estate owner and former accountant would do this. And then we come to another massive question that I posed at the time it happened, soon after it happened, which is, well, Las Vegas hotels are just covered in security cameras. So, A, they must release the footage so that we can see if the official story stands up. And B, if they don't, that would be a massive red flag for the fact that this whole narrative is just a cover story. Well, at the time of this recording, close to 3 weeks after the shooting, no security footage has been released. And that is indeed a massive red flag, together with all this other stuff that's going on. And again, this story is so full of holes that even the mainstream media is questioning what's going on. First of all, there was an Associated Press report in 2013 that said that Las Vegas is America's playground and boasts more cameras per square foot than any airport or sports arena in the country, with, quote, thousands of high-tech lenses watching the gambling floors, lobbies, and elevators. That is what is the situation at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. So here we have the story of a security guard changing dramatically, not minutely, and no footage from these thousands of cameras at the time of this recording being released to show us what happened and to explain how this man is supposed to have got all those bags of weapons and ammunition into the hotel and up to his room without being noticed. I mean, it's laughable if it wasn't so tragic. So here we have a mainstream report in the Los Angeles Times. In Las Vegas, the casino is always watching, says the headline, and yet it missed Stephen Paddock. Exactly. Why didn't hotel security notice Paddock bringing in at least 10 suitcases filled with guns? Fair question, to say the least. The casino hotels on the Las Vegas Strip, it says, with all their glitzy delights, aren't just palaces of distraction. They're miniature surveillance states. A typical facility might be armed with thousands of cameras which watch gamblers as they enter. So why have we seen Stephen Paddock enter again and again? While they play and when they leave. The footage is stored as potential evidence and monitored by internal security forces who are prepared to dispatch a response within moments in case of problems. In Vegas, everybody's got to watch everybody else, Robert De Niro said in the 1995 drama Casino. Dealers watch the players, pit bosses watch the people watching the dealers, and the eye in the sky, the camera, watches over all. But now, the Los Angeles Times story says, questions are mounting over a very different type of crime than the grifting and grabbing scams Vegas has always been obsessed with. The mass shooting mounted on October the 1st from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. Casinos like Mandalay Bay, it says, spend millions and millions of dollars on security. They're quoting a surveillance expert who helped to install an early version of the Mandalay Bay security system after it opened in the 1990s. And this man says that the system he installed had close to 1,200 cameras, and he estimates that Mandalay Bay today will have about 3,000. 3,000 cameras. No footage of Paddock in the hotel and doing what he was said to have been doing in the run-up to the shooting. Hotels put cameras all over to keep records of the behavior and the movements of people. They're all recording 24/7, this man said. Anybody who walks through that door is an asset. They're going to take care of their assets, said the expert, who declined to be identified because of concerns of future litigation. He says that hotels put cameras on bottlenecks like elevator banks. Typically, they want to see who's coming onto the floor and off the floor, and they can tell now who goes into rooms with key cards, the expert said. And a former armed security guard at Mandalay Bay expressed confusion over why it took hotel officials and police so long to stop the gunman, and confused he should be, so are the rest of us. So where is this security camera footage that would confirm or destroy the official narrative? Nowhere. Anybody notice how often when these shootings or terrorist attacks take place around the world, where cameras that are everywhere, normally filming people in the public, in tube stations, in airports, and so on, were not working to catch people on camera and thus confirm that the official story is true. Oh no, it wasn't working. 17 cameras look out on the road from the hotel that Princess Diana left, the Ritz Hotel in Paris, all the way to the Pont d'Alma tunnel where the car crashed. None of them working at that time. Why? Well, it's obvious, to say the least. Again, first of all, you have the official story. If the official story is true, then the authorities absolutely want to put that security camera footage in front of you, because it confirms they're telling the truth. See, look, told you. And they want security cameras in place because it's the surveillance Orwellian state that's unfolding. What they don't want is for them to be caught out by the security camera footage showing a very different story to the one they're trying to sell. And thus, oh, the cameras aren't working. Time and time and time and time again. We have to press. People have to press and press for this. The media must press and press for this. Not just security footage to confirm the official story or destroy it. Not just the odd picture, not just a freeze frame. Detailed footage because it exists with all these cameras and the time that he was in the hotel. Other questions, some of them I mentioned after this the shooting happened and have not been answered. How did Paddock get all those guns and ammunition into his room without being noticed, not least with the cameras? Who was the woman who warned the crowd 45 minutes before the shooting that they were all going to die? And why do so many eyewitness reports say that there were multiple shooters, not just one? And there are so many witnesses that have said this, it's clearly that there's something seriously wrong with the there's just one shooter narrative. Not only that, they are saying that there were shooters in the crowd, in among them. And what they want after these attacks, these coordinated attacks, is to isolate it to as few people as possible, preferably one. This is the lone nutter story that gets repeated and repeated and repeated. The assassination of President Kennedy was clearly carried out by marksmen connected to the security agencies. It was a hidden hand state assassination. But to hide that, they have to nail their blame on one man, in this case Lee Harvey Oswald, who they then killed, thanks to Jack Ruby, before he could get into court and repeat in detail what he'd said to journalists in public when he was being moved from place to place, that he was a patsy. In other words, he'd just been set up to take the blame, and he didn't actually do it. And of course he didn't do it when you look at the story. And this is a similar scenario. They want to persuade the public that a lone nutter, Stephen Paddock, was responsible for all of it. Because if you can hold it to one person, it doesn't start to connect out into the wider network that was behind it. So hold the one person nutter and don't yield. So all these witnesses are saying there was multiple shooters. But the police and the FBI, oh no, we say there's only one. There's no evidence that there was more than one. Well, what about these people that were there being shot at who said that was not true? They're not telling the official story, so they must be ignored. The parking service log at the Mandalay Bay Hotel shows that Paddock's car left the hotel at one point, and while he was away, or while the car was away, someone entered his room using his room key. Who was that? There was a room service receipt for September 27th, which was for meals for 2 people in that room on the 32nd floor. So who was the second person? And police said that Paddock checked into the Mandalay Hotel on September 28th. That shows that it was earlier. And in fact, they're now agreeing that their first story of the 28th is not true. It was earlier. And like I say, the alternative media has done a lot of great work. And there's one video I saw, an interesting video. I've done a link to it with this Videocast, and it's pointing out that Paddock left Vegas. He was in Vegas at least on September 19th, and he headed for Phoenix, Arizona, which is not very long, it's a short flight, where records show he hired a car at Phoenix Airport. And where he went in Phoenix from there, nobody knows. But it is known that he then dropped that car back at uh, at at Las Vegas in the early hours of the 20th of September. So what was he doing? In the meantime, like I say, nobody knows. He must have flown to Vegas to hire the car at the airport. But he drove back. So what was he carrying back from Phoenix that he didn't take? And this video points out that Phoenix is the headquarters of the branch of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the so-called ATF. The branch, which was the coordination center for Operation Fast and Furious, this so-called gun walking operation, in which the ATF in Phoenix was systematically supplying guns to be transferred to Mexican drug gangs and other violent criminals in a scandal that eventually came out. But of course, it's still going on. These things don't stop just because an earlier version of it's been exposed. So it might be worth having a look at that video and seeing what you think. But certainly there are so many questions to ask. It's unbelievable. And it's no surprise that the authorities have now taken to having no questions allowed news conferences on the Vegas shootings, and banning the alternative media who will ask questions that clearly they can't answer and expose their nonsense. Another story that I saw this week, why did MGM Resorts CEO dump over 80% of his stock 3 weeks before the massacre? This is James Murren, and he's a member of the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, which advises the US president and is connected to Homeland Security. This council was set up by Boy George Bush after 9/11. And the story says, on September 8th, James Murren, CEO of MGM Resorts International, owners of Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, sold over 80% of his stock. Just 3 weeks later, the deadliest mass shooting in modern history of the United States would unfold from within a room on the hotel's 32nd floor. According to the Ledger Gazette, Murren dumped this great number of shares worth millions and millions of dollars. And this was just before the shooting. And of course, after the shooting, with all that went on, the share price went down. So that's another story that's being looked at also. So in this same week that all this is going on, we have this story too, completely related in the theme. CIA urges Trump to delay release of 3,000 never-before-seen documents on JFK assassination. More than 3,000 never-before-seen documents from the FBI, CIA, Justice Department on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it was in 1963, of course, are scheduled to be released, with many experts fearing that such a large release of secret JFK assassination documents will spur a, quote, new generation of conspiracy theories. About 3,100 files are still sealed in the National Archives. Under the 1992 JFK Records Act, the archives have until October 26th to decide which of those files to publicly disclose. Some of the classified documents include a CIA personality study of Oswald, top secret testimony of former CIA officers to congressional committees, and so on and so forth. It goes on. And it seems that the CIA is urging that these documents, or at least as many of them as they can stop, are not released. Now, the assassination was in 1963. In fact, they're asking for it to be held for another 25 years, apparently. Now, the assassination was in 1963. What's the problem? What's any national security interest in that? Nothing. The interest is not national security, it's protecting the hidden hand and its methods of operation, including killing a president, because that suited their agenda. And, you know, when you see the abuse and dismissal that independent journalists get when they question the official story and unravel it and expose it. They're called conspiracy theories, conspiracy nuts. And then you see the mainstream media this week in the form, on one example that I saw, a man called Geraldo Rivera, who's apparently a talk show host and claims to be some kind of journalist. I watched him being interviewed on a Fox News program, and he was sitting there trying to defend the official story of the Las Vegas shootings and to explain away, without being there lying, the reason that the story keeps changing. It was absolutely pathetic and disgusting to behold. And that's the kind of journalism that allows these things to get away without being properly investigated and exposed, and has done decade after decade after decade. And how appropriate that the term conspiracy theorist and conspiracy theory, this whole conspiracy nut nonsense, that those terms came into widespread use when the CIA urged the major media organizations in America to use conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theory as labels of ridicule for those who were investigating the Kennedy assassination in the 60s and showing, again, not difficult, showing it to be a pack of lies. And all these decades later, today's mainstream journalists and others are still using that CIA-generated term of conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theory to dismiss legitimate, proper journalistic investigation of official stories. And I had to smile this week that when Tucker Carlson, who does some really good work defending freedom of speech and questioning official stories that make sense, don't make any sense, when he was incredulous about the changing narrative about the Las Vegas shootings, he felt he had to keep saying, "I'm not a conspiracy nut, but," and what's becoming more and more obvious week after week after week is it's the so-called conspiracy nuts that have been telling the truth all these years about what happens and the methods of manipulation. And it's the mainstream that have been ridiculing the conspiracy nuts that have missed the point the whole way through. Missed the point that there is a hidden hand. It is global, and it manipulates events in order to change society in the way that it wants. And the more of these shootings there are, the more of this terrorism there is, the more excuses they have to impose the surveillance state, which has been the plan all along. So the people who've been ridiculed all these years are now increasingly being shown to have been right on the money. And it's only just begun. The world is waking up, and about bloody time.